really?
4 or 5 on Friday.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's
seriously
a lot.
now. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thanks.
Maybe.
Right,
Sure
right,
they did.
yeah. So I hope they're right.
Welcome to the Monday, March 12th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
You have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Communication, 1, request of Alderman Joe Moore to create a manual of specs and standards to be given to developers looking to invest in Green Bay. Recommendation, refer to staff.
Move to refer staff.
Second?
You have a motion and a second to refer to staff. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Old business, none. New business, number 2. Consideration with possible action on the request of Alderman Guy Zima to review planning ordinances with respect to parking and setbacks that fall in front of front doors.
As I said at a previous meeting, this isn't just directly from me. It probably affects my district less than it does others, but I know it was referred out to the fire department, and they didn't seem to be very much in favor of trying to find any solution to it, but I haven't had time to really work with them or study. You know, we have elections going on right now. So I really think some study we should ask them to give us recommendations of what we can do to try to help situations where they need parking, and there doesn't seem to be another option. I mean, the night I was here, it was from a different district. It was a very big lot and everything, but I mean, there's plenty of room to go around it, but what could they do to make exceptions to allow people to have more parking? We don't want to do something really exotic, like have 2 driveways and running up to a house. But, you know, if they could expand one way or another, I don't know. I just think we've got to face reality of what goes on, you know, when they have really problems. People have cars and vehicles, and I can appreciate that fire department wants to get in and out. That's why I thought that maybe if we pushed it back, that the driveway doesn't go all the way up to the door, but it leaves plenty of room for people to be able to go in and out of the front door. Or I don't know if there's anything else that could be done, but I think we have to try to solve people's problems. No one wants to hinder the work of a rescue squad or something like that, but you know, is it that big of a hindrance if you've at least allowed enough room for them to maneuver? So I guess I'd like you to just send it back for a little more recommendations of what they think could be done to try to resolve parking problems. If they absolutely have to have that door open, you know, I mean, it isn't a hard surface that comes up to the door. I mean, maybe a driveway would actually be more often than not might be helpful, because it isn't always a car there. And then it's a hard surface, and they can roll their equipment and everything, and not have to try to deal with grass or something like that. But I just think we have to try to get some kind of set of rules where we can have somebody that can make some exception. I guess we do have the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I guess I'd like you to send it back and ask for a little more review and suggestions of what they think might be some solution to provide parking where it's needed. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I could just introduce a few examples. So there is a section in the zoning code that talks about single-stall garages that have an ability to widen that driveway. And this was done a few years ago to allow for those unique situations where they just needed some room to expand, but really couldn't. So there's one example that Alderman Zimmer was talking about, this is on Fern Lane. This was before the Board of Appeals back in January. And this is a situation where they expanded the driveway in front of the front door. They did this without a permit. It was a complaint, and they were eventually brought back to the Board of Appeals. The ordinance that I showed you before would allow for an expansion of a single-stall garage. The problem is there's really no room to expand here. You can go maybe a couple of feet, but you end up being in front of the front door. The board tends to see quite a few of these throughout the years. There's another example on Edgewood. Again, the drives were put in without a permit, and the challenge is, as you can see, the cars are parked in front of the front door. Just really kind of prohibits anyone getting around them and getting into the front door. So there's kind of an inherent problem here. You can see both duplexes probably built late 60s, early 70s. It's kind of an inherent problem with the design. They were designed for single stalls, maybe smaller families, maybe not anticipating really expanding or having more vehicles on the site. So it really is, it is a design issue. The one alternative the board has suggested is that they can go through the garage. They could put another door on the back side, possibly gain some room in the back. There really is no other options. This is a two-family that's set rather close to the street. There's maybe 15, 20 feet depth. There's really no more room to park. The only other place to go would be in front of the front yard, but then we're causing issues with aesthetics and parking in front of the front door. So we did reach out to the police and fire departments. Both have concerns about parking there for the obvious reasons of access. Staff has concerns about the aesthetic and what it's going to do to kind of creating some of these expanded parking areas in residential neighborhoods. So our recommendation is not to change the ordinance. That's not to say we wouldn't mind looking at some options, but we've been kind of down this road a few different times. There aren't a lot of options. Their option usually is the Board of Appeals, and I think they also look for guidance too. So we've got some better guidance now, at least from police and fire, but I think that's the purpose of the Board of Appeals, is look at these on a case-by-case basis and see if there's a hardship or not. So with that, that's our recommendation, is to not change the ordinance at this time.
Just follow up on what Mr. Meyer said. I mean, I think through this, you know, we've had the discussion with fire department, we've had the discussion with the police department, we've had the discussion with our staff based on some of these examples. And, you know, as far as the default for, you know, what that ordinance is going to be, I think the alternatives is the Board of Appeals in terms of, you know, when there's a particular case where, because of the unique topography or layout, that is an option, and I think we'd prefer to maintain the default is not putting it in front of the house, but if there's a special exception where we can demonstrate that there's not going to be a negative impact on health, safety, welfare, then that's the option. You know, the other, it's a bigger question and impacts more than this, but it's going down the road of allowing for parking on the street overnight. You know, which is a totally different realm and a totally different discussion. But I think just in terms of the health, safety, welfare standards, you know, not expanding paving for vehicles is most appropriate at this time.
I just had a question on it. With commercial properties, I see a lot of them around where there is parking right by the front door. I think that must be allowed for commercial properties, maybe other classes of properties, or what? Or how do we distinguish that?
I guess it's really a totally different type of design. It's more of a, in the commercial world, and there might be accessibility issues, so you might see spots that are closer to the door for obvious reasons for handicapped individuals to access the building.
But wouldn't that have the same concern for police and fire being able to enter in an emergency?
Generally, those areas are open. I mean, there's an area for them to enter that's unobstructed, so to speak. I wouldn't say those are all in front of front doors necessarily. Or there's other means to the building that they can gain access. Residential is just a different situation, I think.
Alternating, I think also with some of the commercial properties, those are required to go through a site plan review. So in terms of seeing the setbacks and everything, whereas, you know, for some homes, it may not require that level of review, so that we wouldn't catch it. Versus in a commercial site plan alteration, change of use, you know, we have the ability to see that distance and be able to prohibit or make sure there was enough room to allow for that ingress and egress.
Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
So with the Board of Appeals on those, did they have them remove it, or did they okay it?
It varies. In this case, they asked them to remove both sections of the span.
Like on this one, if you just didn't park on the section, you know, the sidewalks to the front door are an extension of the driveways. So if you just didn't park in front of the front door, you probably could have a pavement there for your sidewalk, right?
We prefer to see a separation. I mean, there's an area where you park and where you walk. So I think if they had some sort of green strip or something to differentiate that, you could expand the driveway a little bit, but the sidewalk, you know, would be clear, free and clear from parking. You couldn't park on that sidewalk section.
Well, I just want to reiterate, actually, I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals for a totally different matter, had nothing to do with this, I just happened to be there. And the committee themselves, I brought this communication really more as a favor to the committee, so that, because they're looking for a little more guidance, because there are a lot of appeals that come before them. And so they're saying, well, we're just going to put a moratorium on all appeals or something until we get better guidelines. So I guess they're looking for more guidelines. I mean, when I look at this, you say I don't feel there's anything aesthetically wrong with that. So this one was actually torn out?
Yes. Well, it should have been removed. I don't know if exactly was removed, it was ordered to be removed.
But I just feel for aesthetics purposes, I mean, I don't find that offensive. But I guess they were looking, can they make some exemptions? For instance, okay, you put it back and put a planter in there or something to still keep it more attractive, that it's not just you're paving right up to the door or whatever it is. I guess they're looking for some guidelines. That's why I think I'd like you to get to the staff to get more thought into it. What can we do to solve today's problems of people having more automobiles, and also trying to keep our city looking decent, you know? Because I think Alderman Nicholson gave one where they paved practically the whole front yard, and there was, you know, some absurd amount of cars were being parked there, and you know, it's, you can say take them on a one-by-one cases, but they're frustrated, so I guess they're looking for a little more guidance. So, like I say, this, I don't have, my district doesn't have a lot of this type of thing. This is in the newer areas, but I, just as a courtesy, did bring it forward. So it's not something that's personally benefiting me in any way. But it's, you know, like I would really be frustrated if I was told to take that out. I'd say, I don't want to live in Green Bay anymore. And I don't find that offensive in the slightest. And so, I don't know. I think something, I don't know who's the right people to think it over, but there are a lot of people in Green Bay that are frustrated with the strictness and the tightness of the laws, you know. And some get okay, others don't. And it's you want to be accommodating as long as it doesn't turn it into a, well, you make the area look like a trash heap. You know? So I think that's what they're looking for. I think that other case or something, if they, I think they were willing to come back a little bit if they could, and you know, they put a buffer in or something to still make it not look like just a concrete jungle. So I just thought some more thought could be given to it if they somehow added something to improve the appearance, so it wasn't just a concrete jungle. You know, some kind of flower planting along the side of it, or something like that. You know, a built-up flower bed or whatever. So Because I think people would spend more money if that was really the problem, if it's aesthetics mainly. But, so, I think that's what they would like you to give some consideration or some study to. What aesthetic requirements could we do, add to, in order to make exceptions and still try to add to the beauty of the area?
So is the Board of Appeals, are they getting a lot of these kinds of issues before them?
I don't have an exact number for you, but they do see them on occasion, yes. Very similar situations.
Is it something worth pursuing? I mean, in a situation like that, I don't really see a lot of other options. And I agree that the cement aesthetically looks okay, but I think once you start putting in 2 more cars in there, and you've got 4 cars across, and you've got, more than half of the house is just cars in the front. Aesthetically, I don't think the cement looks bad, but for fire and rescue, if they can't get in the door, is it worth looking at what options we could have?
I think that's part of the problem. There aren't a lot of options to look at. It's just,
Right.
again, it's a flaw of the design, the placement of the structure relative to the street. There's just not a lot of options there. We do talk to the board about different scenarios, but there's not much they can do or we can offer. So it's kind of an all or nothing proposition sometimes. Or it goes back to the hardship that they have to look at
Right.
and contend with. But I think, again, having some more guides from police and fire, that's helpful to them at least. But they do talk about design issues when they do have a request come in. And they talk about some separation or something they can do aesthetically, but there isn't much at the end of the day they can do.
And all properties, they're required to have 2 parking spots, correct? So in the garage, outside of the garage, that would be 2 spots.
There are 2, right. Typically, a single unit would have 2 spaces, but the problem is with larger families, maybe there's a 3rd or 4th
Right.
vehicle, so.
Okay.
Your daughter isn't old enough to drive yet.
No, she's not. Our driveway's big enough.
I know, speaking personally, I personally live in a duplex, almost exactly the same scenario. We've got a 1-stall garage, 1-stall driveway. My wife and I are constantly jockeying cars.
Right,
But that's just an inconvenience. That wouldn't be a hardship.
right.
Would a slab in front of the front door be convenient? Sure it would. But I can also see the police and fire department's point of view.
Right.
If there's an emergency and they can't get in, seconds mean sometimes life, so I can see their point. But I know for a fact when I was on the city council a long time ago, even then the Board of Appeals was getting countless items of this nature. So if anything, it's gotten worse, not better. I personally, I would not be opposed to referring this back to see if anything could be done in respect to in deference to the alderman and also in respect to the Board of Appeals. I don't know if anything could be done, but.
I don't know if we'll offer, I don't think we can offer any more solutions necessarily. I think that's part of the challenge. I think that's a better left thing to the board for them to help, troubleshoot each request that comes in, I think. Again, we wouldn't support a wholesale change to the ordinance because that's going to make these things permitted. I think it's more or less a case-by-case basis where the board has some flexibility. They have some guidance at least to make a decision. It's not a perfect situation. I mean, they're in a tough spot because it's not a simple solution, but changing the ordinance, I think, would make it maybe worse citywide, potentially.
I think as Mr. Meyer said, in terms of coming back with a default notion of what the ordinance should be, I can't see, based on the conversations we've had with police, fire, our staff recommending a change, even with additional requirements for buffering or landscaping, given, the addition of concrete, starts to make it harder to draw the line in terms of, all right, well, how far over are we going? The second part of that, is following up with enforcement. These driveways look great when they're poured, but 10 years, after wear and tear, and as you can see, we have limits on our apron width. So in terms of making those movements, driveway movements back and forth, I think we had this discussion, pretty intensely and looked for options and alternatives and really feel that the best option is to let the Board of Appeals hear these out. I know, I understand Alderman Zimmer's point that, yeah, it can be frustrating to decide these cases, but that's why they go to the Board of Appeals. You know, their job to decide if it is a hardship or not. You know, and I think just in terms of, we as a staff can't see how allowing this would benefit health, safety, or welfare in any way, and if anything, it probably takes away from it. So that was our recommendation to not change the ordinance. Tying it back, I can't say that anything would change because we've been talking about this for quite some time.
And the Board of Appeals has the ability to add conditions to their approval, so they can kind of troubleshoot that along with staff a little bit and hopefully find a solution to make it work.
So they haven't put a moratorium on doing
No,
this? Okay.
not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you know, in our declaration depends everything. It's the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And, you know, I understaffed they just like everything like an engineer. They like everything perfect. But I'm just saying, isn't there some way to, you know, you're the representatives of the people. The staff doesn't really get to dictate what you have to think. I mean, they can say they don't want to recommend any changes. That doesn't mean that you can't recommend changes. And I'm just thinking, I'd like it sent back to say, is there some way that we can say that if people can come up with a design that's still aesthetically, you know, appealing and will accommodate them, that we can allow that to be a consideration. There's a good buffering or whatever. I mean, I find that almost criminal to force them to take that out there. That is, you know, you talk about the pursuit of happiness. A little thing like that creates a lot of happiness for people that got a couple kids in the family, got a car or whatever, you know. And I just don't think it looks bad at all. And I really don't think the health hazard issue is I think that's overplayed. People can get in and out of doors. I mean, these firemen, they get people out of upstairs going down little narrow hallways and everything else. They get the job done one way or the other. I think the aesthetics and how the neighborhood looks is what's most important. I wouldn't want this thing, you know, that just the whole front yard just becomes a cement jungle. But I do think that, you know, if we can find a way to help people pursue their happiness and also not take away from the happiness of their neighbors by having something really ugly. Of course, aesthetics is all in the eye of the beholder, I think, but I think we all know the difference between something that's attractive and something that's not attractive. I mean, they're talking about building apartment units on Broadway here now that don't have garages, period. I mean, that sounds really aesthetically horrible to me. But, you know, we're stricter than heck at something like this, and then we just let it flow somewhere else. So, I don't know. Again, it's not something that personally affects me so much. I just did it as a courtesy, as I said. I don't like to have to be arguing for other people or something, but I think something needs to be done to rectify a situation like this.
Thank you. Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little history on this. I was going to ask, did these folks get a permit to do this? They did or didn't?
Did not.
Okay.
In both cases.
I mean, I had a situation in my district once where a person went ahead and put in an apron on the driveway, and they put it 8 inches into the neighbor's property. And I said, you got to have at least 2.5 feet, and they cut it. So she cut it back, and it was 2 feet 7 inches. So it was still off 2 inches, and we let that go. But you know, I know the Board of Appeals is there to handle situations like this. I guess the concern I have is that somebody went ahead and just did this without a permit. So that's my concern. And like I said, aesthetically, to me, it doesn't look all that bad. Like I said, you can have 100 different folks go ahead and do something like this, and you might have half that look fine and half that don't, but it's the roll of the dice, so. I don't know, some more has to be done with this, I think, but.
That's where I thought the aesthetics should come in, you know.
Well, like I said,
They have to
it's-
present something that's aesthetically.
And
pleasing.
when you talk about aesthetics, you know, one person's view of aesthetics will be different than someone else's, so. Like I said, personally, Guy, looking at that, it personally doesn't bother me, but I can see how problems come up when when somebody just goes ahead and puts something in, and then after the fact, we have to react to it, so.
Some people just don't know the difference.
Yeah, they don't. Well, I'm sorry. You live in a city, we need to go by rules and regulations and such. So, anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner
So,
Nathan.
I absolutely agree. I want to make it easy for people to do things. I don't want to make people to go through extra hoops. However, my house doesn't look like that. My neighbor's house doesn't look like that. And I really, as much as I would love there to be a one-size-fits-all answer, it is a one size per site, depending on what the house looks like, what the yard looks like. Houses are going to vary. They don't all look like single-story duplexes like this. I don't want to make people jump through extra hoops, but I really feel that the Board of Appeals is the way to go in this situation because they can look at them site by site. If there was an easy answer, I would like to go with that, but I don't think that there is. And so I think my motion would be to make no change to the existing ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Yes.
I guess the only way I would want to refer it back is if we could get some direct feedback from the Board of Appeals, since they're seeing these more frequently. If they have any ideas, any direction they can give us. I mean, it sounds like there's not much there, but that'd be the only way I would see this referring this back is with the direction, getting something from them saying what's some options. It seems kind of, sending it back without anything there would be just kind of be a hardship on staff. It kind of sounds like they've already talked to it ad nauseum, so that'd be the only thing I could say that we could send it back for.
Has the Zone of Appeals been contacted, or have you talked to them at all about this issue?
I sent them an email regarding the police and fire comments at that point, so that's the only contact I've had with them recently.
So you haven't had any personal direction from them?
No, I think they've kind of asked the plan, it's kind of a chicken or the egg, you know, who's going to give guidance first, so they kind of asked to work with the plan commission, I guess. They're kind of looking to the plan commission for some guidance initially, I guess.
Nobody wants to make a decision. They want somebody else to recommend. And they sent it to you because they're looking for guidance, and you're saying send it to them to get guidance. So it's like Mr. Neumeier says, it's a chicken for the egg. But I just keep throwing in that, hey, you know, aesthetics is different to different people, but most of us know when something looks okay and when it doesn't look okay.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second Lisa's.
You will, okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to note that I intend to abstain because I missed the first couple minutes of the presentation.
Okay. So noted. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
You go opposed?
Oh, no.
Oh,
I'm
you're in
in favor.
favor. Okay.
I'm sorry, I've got a hearing issue.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. So we have 4 in favor. Okay, motion carries. Item 3, consideration with possible action on the request for a variance from sections 14-724 of the subdivision and platting ordinances to allow for a land division less than the allowable frontage at 1046 Caroline Street, submitted by Mark Ford.
Thank you. There is a reminder sheet in your staff report for the reasons that we granted variance within the city. These things are basically an extreme hardship due to the physical nature of the site or anything that would cause an extreme hardship to the applicant themselves. So those are all listed within your staff report for your review. This site is on Caroline Street, which is just off of Shawano Avenue. It is in an already established neighborhood, so the criteria for setbacks and frontage are a little bit different. So within this site, it would have to be a minimum of 50 feet for frontage. What they're proposing would be 36.63 for lot 1 and 38.41 for lot 2. So typically when we see the exemptions for this kind of setup, they have one house that has a structure, one lot that has a structure and then enough space to create a small lot, which isn't something that we're typically in favor of because then we're creating a situation in which we're putting a house onto a small lot. In this scenario, though, there are already 2 existing homes. So this gives a little bit of the overview of the site layout. So the lots surrounding it, everything within this neighborhood is about 50 to 55 feet, so we're not deviating too far from the ordinance itself. These already have 2 existing housing structures that have rear garages that face that public alley with an open shared public paved area in the back. So because there are already existing structures and the city does strive to have homes on individual lots, we are recommending approval of this request.
Thank you. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, consideration with possible action on a request to vacate an unimproved portion of Royalty Street submitted by Dennis Hecker, property owner.
We are actually looking to hold this request until the next meeting or the following meeting. We are going to be working through with the applicant who is here with our Parks Department and Department of Public Works to get a nice option for some trail access as well as a vacation, hopefully to help the design of his apartments. So we're requesting a hold.
Do we need a motion for
I was
that?
going to say, do we need a motion to
Yes,
hold?
please.
Move to hold. We have a motion to hold. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 5, consideration with possible action on appointments to the Broadway, Downtown, and Old Main Street Business Improvement District boards as nominated by the respective bids and approved by Mayor Jim Schmidt.
Well, Matt was going to present, but I don't know where he just went.
Right.
All the information is in your packets. This is basically just a rubber stamp approval through our bid process that the Plan Commission has to review any new appointments. So within there we have who's listed for what bid that they're going for. These are recommended from the mayor, so we just look to approve those new appointments.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have a spiel, I just told them what they were doing.
Oh, sorry. Really quickly. I don't really have a spiel. I can just kind of explain the process a little bit. Matt Buchanan, I work on the city's economic development team, for those of you who don't know me. Kind of serve as the liaison to the bids. So the Broadway, Downtown, and Old Main bids have put forth their nominees for new board members. Per our bid appointment procedures, the bids are required to put forth their nominations. The staff and the mayor review and approve and put forward to you, and then you review and put forward to the the council. So that's where we are today. In the packet is a list of all the nominees. The bid directors did not attend, but I could try to answer any questions you might have.
Move to approve the appointments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve.
I need to recuse myself as my wife is one of the nominees.
So motion. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Informational, item 6. Information on a request by Alderman Dave Nennick that the Law Department and Planning staff provide the Planning Commission with an update regarding the new state law concerning conditional use permits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, well, 2017 Wisconsin Act 67 went into effect in November. And a portion of that act deals with conditional use permits. And really what that portion of Act 67 was a legislative response to a Wisconsin Supreme Court case where a conditional use permit was denied. This one was for a frac sand mine, but it was basically denied based solely on neighbors' objections. The frac mine company sued, went through up to the Supreme Court for the state. The state upheld the zoning board's denial, and then the legislature threw it in Act 69 to say, well, no, you can't do that. So basically with the new requirements for conditional use permits, it kind of limits the discretion for approval of conditional use permits. So it defines conditional use permits a little bit differently than most people think of conditional use permits. These are now considered allowed uses that don't require a variance. They have to be approved or denied based on the compliance with standards that are written in your zoning code, and also any conditions that are imposed upon it by the, in this case, Plan Commission and Council or zoning board, depending on your town, county, whatnot. But what you can't approve or deny it solely based on preference of use, any public comments, or any unsubstantiated potential impacts. The Act also says that any standards or conditions that are either in your code or that are placed on it by a board or a council, those have to be reasonable and ideally measurable. So they're putting a little bit higher standard on those. They have to relate to either to the ordinance standards or what is now defined as substantial evidence, and that is facts and information directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions of the CUP. Again, not preference and not speculation. So an example would be it's going to cause too much traffic. You can use that argument, but you have to do a traffic study. So you can't just be speculative on that it's going to cause too much traffic. Denial must be backed up again with that substantial evidence. The city's burden is now to articulate why it doesn't meet the ordinance standards. We also have to allow the applicant to recommend conditions. So if the use is deemed not appropriate, they can say, well, I'll do this to make it appropriate. Because once again, now it's considered an allowed use. And then the last item really is that the applicant must provide evidence that their application and any of the requirements and conditions will be satisfied. So they have to prove that they're going to satisfy them, not say, well, we'll take care of that. How are you going to exactly take care of whatever that deficiency is? So really the big takeaway for CUPs in Act 67 is a city can't deny or place conditions on a CUP unless they're supported by what is now defined as substantial evidence. And that's really the big takeaway of the CUP portion of Act 67. But what I did want to mention, Act 67 deals with a few other items as well. So what we're going to be doing, probably coming up at a Plan Commission meeting soon, we're going to review the content of our zoning ordinance specific to conditional use permits and see if anything needs to be changed or amended. Also, we're going to take a look at the standards that are in our CUP, because now we have to base more of these decisions on those standards. We have a pretty good set of standards in there already. But we'll take a look at those. And then as another thought is take a look at what we're listing as conditional uses. It's pretty common for most communities to put conditional uses and think, well, they may fit, but if they don't fit, we can deny them. So that now has changed with this legislation. So we'll take a look at what's listed as a conditional use to see if those need to be pulled out of some districts or not. And then we'll come back with all that to you. And that's kind of your update.
So when there is a request and staff gives us a recommendation, are you going to state substantial reasons that perhaps would I know this thing is subject to legal challenge, and the courts will probably ultimately determine how far municipalities have to go, but it's kind of hard for a citizen board, to determine what would constitute a substantial reason under the law.
Yeah, and typically, and I'm not sure, I haven't been in Green Bay too long here, but typically, conditional use permits, you generally get a recommendation of approval with conditions. And in the staff report, we would definitely, if we're recommending denial and even recommending conditions, we would definitely put that reasoning behind why we're putting it in. So you would have that background from staff. Yes, sir.
Is it the staff's opinion this is a true, this is an inner lawyer in me coming up, is it the staff's opinion that this is a true substantive change, or is it more of a procedural change in the sense that we need to create better records for denial or approval?
For the city, I don't think it is a very substantial change. I mean, our code is pretty good the way it's written. But for some other communities in the state that may have been more loose with their approvals and denials, probably impacts them a lot more. But for us, I don't see this as being much of a change in our code at all. There's probably only going to be a few minor tweaks.
Would it be possible for us to receive a copy?
Sure. Yeah. When we bring any of the text amendments, if necessary, through, we'll put a copy of the act in there, and with the staff report, so you'll get all that, and copies of the sections of the code that they relate to.
In the meantime, there was a pretty good article in Municipality in February about it that I think if people read that, you'll get a pretty good overview of what some of the municipal concerns are. It was written by Dan Olson, who used to be an assistant city attorney here in Green Bay years ago. And I thought he did a pretty good job outlining some of the pitfalls that you have to be aware of. So maybe we could get copies of that.
If you're willing to shoot that over to me, I will include that.
This is very good, but I got the original at home. I can bring the original on.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question.
Yes, Alderman Spire.
Thank you, Chair. I realize this is informational, but is this something that we'll just wait to hear from staff as far as the council's?
Yep, we'll place something on the agenda when
you're ready.
When staff and legal have time.
And we'll have enough information ahead of time to study.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely something City Council needs to be aware of too, because they don't always agree with the recommendations that come out of the Planning Commission, and
right.
It's ultimately the council's decision that has to comply with the law.
I guess one of the concerns I have, just over the years, all the various conditional use permits that have come through the city, they all vary, but I know how some have been overturned, and there could be possible legal action. There's I just see a scenario where this isn't if this is not defined really strictly, it could be an issue for all of us. So hopefully, like you said, David, that our ordinance and such is set up well enough that we're pretty solid that way. But we'll be watching this one closely because I think it is very important.
Yeah, a lot of times we get citizen comments and they're subjective type of comments. And you can't restrict, I suppose, the public from giving their opinions on issues, but when it comes to the decisions, they can't be subjective decisions. They have to be evidence-based.
I think one other point too is like on some of these conditional use permits that come out, various projects that come forward where you have to try to get notice to the neighbors and such, and sometimes, I don't know if we have that pretty well defined now as far as what the area is that you would define. Many times we have a project and somebody says, well, we weren't notified, even though they might be outside of that limit, but they're close enough that they're still affected. So there are just a number of things that, I don't know if there's any consistency with that, but I would think that making sure that the area is incorporated in the notice is very, very important. So, whatever that distance may be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director's update.
All right. So we do not have a meeting. We can council, so there wasn't a report to go. But with that, at the last council meeting, we still had a third reading for ordinances, amending the official map for Grandview Place, doing the rezoning for Mr. Hector's property, along with the other properties around that of University Avenue. We also had the PUD for Sitka Street for that single-family residence, allowing a directional wall sign in I-43 Business Center, and then also the PUD off Finger Road, North Erie Road, Catalina Drive, Erie Road. That was, I'm sorry, the PUD and the area development pattern granted were both approved. So those went through their third reading otherwise.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.